Welcome to Attached, a platform for adding breadth and depth to everyday living. I'm Yakov Danishefsky, and this is the Shovavim series, a special release of tools and principles to help increase self-understanding and control for a life of elevated Kedusha. It's fitting that for the last video of this Shovavim series, of this round of these videos, that will really touch on what I believe to be the most core and the deepest part of what it really means to try and address these issues and to try and really develop ourselves in a new way. Which is that when we begin the conversation and the relationship between our adult current self and that younger child self that we spoke about in the last video and in the video before that, that younger self that was in some sort of forest, lost, struggling, dealing with whatever challenges that most kids at most stages of life in their developmental stages are going to have some struggle. It doesn't have to be that there was something profoundly traumatic or something objectively horrible going on. There could have been, and unfortunately that's a reality that exists in this world, that's not uncommon. But it doesn't have to be necessarily something like that. It could just be, quote unquote, just be the regular challenges of adapting to a confusing, complicated, and challenging world that exists around us. And nobody walks through that unscathed. Nobody. And so whatever challenges we were facing at that stage in our life developed into building the raft that became the compulsive behavior that we've been trying to talk about and trying to work on. And so what we talked about in the last video was creating an understanding and a relationship between your adult self and that younger part as to what was going on, what were those challenges. Once we've listened and really listened and spent time with that and just developing a close and meaningful and safe relationship between our adult self and that younger part, and we've heard what the struggle and the vulnerability was, and we've listened to it, once we've done that, then the next step, and there's so much more to say about this, and we're not going to capture it all here, but we're just going to mention one point. The next step is to provide the update, to have the adult self provide the major update to that younger self, to take them almost on a virtual tour, as if, of our current lives, of the ways that things now in our life are different than they were back then, and they always are. That doesn't mean that life now is perfect or that all my problems are solved and that none of the challenges exist. Of course, they still do. But things are profoundly different now. What does that mean? It might mean that I have a family now. I might have a wife. I might have children. I have new friends. I have a new financial situation. I have new beliefs about the world. I have new understandings about what it was that happened to me back then and what was going on back then. Back then, I may have interpreted things in a certain way that may have been negative towards myself. And now I might have a different understanding as to what was actually happening and how to understand myself and how to and what beliefs to carry about myself or about the world. I might have different understandings now about God, about Judaism, about spirituality, about the world, about life. I might be in a different physical circumstance. And most profoundly, the biggest update of all of them is that what I have now that I didn't have back then is my adult self. As a child, we're limited in so many ways. And now I have an adult who is here for that younger child. And that relationship is the biggest update. That caretaker, that supporter, that cheerleader, that guide, that adult self is the biggest update we can provide for that younger self. And when we can show that update and we can start to make the links to connect all the different pieces of the update with whatever it was that that younger child part of us said to us and told us about and showed us were the challenges, we can start to fill those gaps and those voids, and we can start to heal the brokenness of what the compulsive behaviors we're trying to heal. Because remember, again, at the core of it, the compulsive behaviors were there to deal with a problem. And what that means is that the compulsive behaviors won't stop until we deal with the problem in a healthier and different way. The adult self can work with the child self to address and heal and nourish and be there to try and heal and work towards addressing what those problems were in new ways, in different ways. This part of the work that I'm talking about now is much more vulnerable, much deeper, much more inner. It's really delving into the insides of who we are in a very real way, more than all the earlier videos. And there's so much more to say, but I think that this is a very open-ended kind of send-off to this series of videos. And I hope that it can be something that can be helpful for you, something you can explore further and become aware of that younger inner self that we all carry, because there's so much profound richness and life for us to pull out of that self to become a more fully embodied and more adapted and complete and wholesome version of who we are. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this, please follow us on WhatsApp, YouTube, or Instagram. All our podcast series can be found wherever you listen to podcasts. I'd love to hear from you, so please reach out with questions, comments, or suggestions, or to be added to our WhatsApp groups. You can reach us through email using Yakov, YAKOV, .attached@gmail.com, or on WhatsApp at 773-888-2413.